How's it going? We're back, episode 3, VAR and Espresso. We have Leo,
Hey,
myself, and Daniel joins us today. How's it going? From Daniel, you're in England somewhere, correct?
Somewhere in England, absolutely.
All right. Uh, well, we talked yesterday about how that first game was going to be probably ugly with half the team at home and playing it against the amateurs. I don't know if anyone saw that coming. But interesting. They asked Michael Elise after the match if he felt bad, and he said,
nope.
"Nope." It's a game, They're there, and these teams are competing. So whatever. But it was 4-0, and right before halftime, and I was just like, man, they'll probably just kind of walk it in the rest of the match, and then they scored 2 goals in stoppage time, and I'm like, man, that's ruthless. So it ended 10-0 to Bayern. The PSG 4-0 against Atletico Madrid. Palmeiras 0-0, and Botafogo 2-1 against Seattle in the game that we thought probably would be the most competitive of the day. The two later games are actually pretty competitive. PSG just ran over Madrid. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into today's games. But what was your takeaway from yesterday, Leo, and then Daniel?
I'll let you start, Daniel.
I think what we saw yesterday was the best and the worst fears in regards to the Club World Cup planning. So, for example, the competitiveness between Palmeiras and Porto, or Botafogo and Seattle Sounders, really competitive matches, really interesting. PSG and Atletico Madrid was a lot more competitive than I thought it'd be. The crowd as well were really up for it, which helps. I think one of the big fears is that a lot of these are going to be half-empty stadiums and indifference rather than anything else. But obviously PSG only finished their season, 2.5 weeks ago, so their players are still relatively on it. Atletico finished a week or so before then. So these aren't sort of completely switched off, but you see sort of some of these, like Atletico, not quite being up to the pace of PSG, although which team is at the minute. But then you see, so there's all the good bits, and that's really nice and fun. But then you saw the ugliness of Bayern and Auckland City. And when this is becoming a bit of a TED talk, apologies. But when this Club World Cup format was announced, we were promised sort of the best of all the world playing against each other. And you have a team ranked somewhere, I think it's 4,360 something in the world, which is beneath a lot of non-league English teams, playing against one of the mightiest German teams. And it was kind of just brutal. I also love just how many broadcasters interview Michael Elise, because before he moved to Bayern, obviously he was at Crystal Palace, and watching the Premier League, whenever he was interviewed, he always gives almost monosyllabic answers. He's so base in his responses and targeted, but it's always very minimal. So I don't know what they keep expecting him to do. So when we asked him, like, did he feel sorry for them? Him saying nope. It's just like, that's kind of brilliantly summed up, doesn't it? Like, no other words, just that. Yes, Leo, what's your take?
Oh, in my opinion, the Bayern versus Auckland City's game was the perfect opposition between the worst and the best the club worker can do. And the thing is that, in my point, the problem is that FIFA branded this competition as the world's best clubs, participant, and everything, but it is not. I think Auckland City deserves to be here because they won their participation on the field by winning the Oceanian Championship. But it's kind of difficult to see a team struggles that much against another. It's cool for them to play. We said it yesterday with Sean, because which football supporters doesn't want to play against legends such as Manuel Neuer, Thomas Müller, and such a great team as Bayern Munich. But it's kind of practically awkward to see them struggle that way. Then we've got
Match, wasn't it?
yeah. Then we've got the PSG against Atletico de Madrid game. It was a typical PSG's display. We didn't see anything we'd never seen before. Atletico seemed tired of their season. It was a lot of heat, not so much noise in the stadium. It was like a pre-season tour game, I think. Even the rhythm of the soccer player, and it's normal, by the way. But my biggest surprise, which was not really one, was the Porto against Palmeiras game. It was a really, really good game with a lot of every. When I say what is the Club World Cup, I would say Palmeiras versus Porto is the perfect illustration of that. A crowd in a big stadium in the US, two good teams, talented players like we saw with Rodrigo Mora, 𝐊𝐤𝐤, Ricardo Rios. It was heated between them. It was a good display to this competition, and a good, I think, in my opinion, a good publicity for it. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't watch the Seattle Sounders versus Botafogo because it was 4 a.m. in here. So sorry for that, but it's too much football all the season. So if I miss a game, it's not.
I saw the extended highlights.
Yeah, I saw them too,
but I was really pleasantly surprised. I mean, if you went on the stats alone, you would assume Seattle. I mean, I'm sure we'll go into matches specifically in a moment, but yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised how competitive that was, because obviously, from certainly from a European point of view, the MLS isn't held in the highest esteem. So seeing them go toe to toe with, albeit a South American side as well as the European side, but there's no reason why they should feel smaller from that performance. It's the only real shame is that the other teams in the group are huge. They've got a real uphill battle for the rest of the group.
Yeah, I agree. And you, what did you think of the second match day, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to PSG and just, I mean, this all of a sudden, I mean, we've talked about this multiple times, but this PSG team, I don't know how you don't make them the favorite to win the competition at this point. I mean, they're just, they did that yesterday without Dembele, who's, I guess it will be back at some point in this tournament, but they looked, you see the difference between the teams that are the favorites, Bayern, PSG, we'll see some of those coming in today, probably Chelsea, Manchester City, Real Madrid. Once again, I'll be stunned if it's anyone other than those 5 teams that win the tournament. And I put Chelsea in there, but I still think they're a level below some of these other teams. But Palmeiras Porto in New Jersey, I thought that was going to be a pretty good crowd because of the huge Portuguese and Brazilian population in North Jersey, and it was great. Seattle crowd, really good. PSG, Atletico Madrid. When they showed it at the beginning, it's Los Angeles, so traffic getting to anywhere in Los Angeles, so late arriving crowd. By the end of the match, it was filled in, but I think just PSG, they just the way they play, and that second goal, they seem to find. First of all, they don't give up goals. When you look at this team, I mean, as offensive-minded as they are, I mean, you saw what they did in the Champions League final. I mean, when they want to be, their defense can shut teams down. So I think that's pretty big for them. But that goal at the end of the first half, they seem to find these goals at opportune times, and Vitinha scores there right before the halftime whistle, and you're just like, man, that's it. There's no way back for Atletico Madrid, and then they get the red card. But I just,
Sure.
they're really dominant.
So I'm just going to jump in because I think I agree with most of that. There's the one thing I would disagree with slightly is you saying that they don't give up goals, and that's absolutely right. But they do give up chances. Like even in their run to the Champions League final, it's almost like big moments. So you think about like Donnarumma across the two matches against Arsenal. Arsenal had the greater XG. If he went on chances alone, Arsenal probably should have beaten them in each game. Well, maybe not both, but certainly one of them. And yet they only scored one goal when the XG was, I think, somewhere near 5 over the two matches. And the same thing against Aston Villa. Aston Villa genuinely could have turned that tie around, and Donnarumma had to have a couple of big saves in him. And likewise, we saw today, like you say, the second goal. But I think I actually wrote it down 18 seconds before PSG's second goal.
Yeah.
Atletico Madrid break, they get into the box. Menge does this fantastic last-ditch tackle, but then as he tries to bring the ball away, he actually loses the ball. He loses the ball about 25 yards from goal. Atletico Madrid then attack, and Griezmann has a volley from about 14 yards out, which goes straight at Donnarumma. Now, no big save needed, but the fact is, like, that really could have gone badly, and yet what happens then is Donnarumma throws it out to Vitinha. Vitinha then plays it forward to 𝐊𝐤𝐜𝐤, I believe. He then cuts inside, plays it back to Vitinha, and he scores from the end of the box. So 18 seconds from potentially conceding an equalising goal, and then they're 2 up. So these big moments keep happening for PSG against other European oppositions. Like I say, kept happening with Aston Villa. Happened in the second game against Liverpool as well. So in their run to the Champions League final as well, they kept giving up these big chances, but these big moment players stood up. So I think that might be the only reason why they're not favourites, because I think in our brain somewhere we think logically it's going to run out at some point. At some point they will concede at the wrong moment. I don't know. That's the only thing that sticks in my head. But apart from that, yeah, it's kind of overwhelming. Just once they get a little bit ahead, they are just merciless. It is really impressive to watch, and it's also really enjoyable to see. Players like 𝐊𝐤𝐜𝐤, who like these young players they're now.
Mayulu, yeah.
Yeah, like what a young player he is.
He's 19.
So I'm really enjoying the fact that PSG are also offering these opportunities to the youngsters as well as the big players, and they're just as exciting.
Yeah, and what you are saying, Daniel, about the fact that PSG let their opponents have chances to score. The big difference between Luis Enrique's PSG and the last version of this team is that when they are facing an opponent or something which can mentally break them down, they can respond, because before, when if you remember, what example can I say? Even when there was the remontada against Barcelona, it's in their head that they lost the game. Now they win these games. When in Liverpool, for example, at Anfield, they concede a lot of occasions. When in Villa Park, they concede 2 goals in a heated atmosphere. Against Arsenal in Parc des Princes, at the beginning of the game, Donnarumma made 4 or 5 clearances. And before, I think this PSG would have totally fall apart, but now they didn't. They don't.
Which is all the more impressive, considering we're not talking about the last season. We're talking about the last 5 months.
Yeah.
It's ever since there's the false 9 role, which obviously he has the occasional injury, but they have the attacking quality to bring someone else in to play that role. The system works beautifully. But you do give up the occasional moment, and like you saw with Aston Villa, teams that are brave against them can be torn apart, but they can also actually, that has shown to be a potential weakness. The ball in behind, being brave with how you charge forward, and Villa could have won that game. But probably, as you were saying, the European experience, the boldness to sort of, and also like, and as I said before, big player mentality, like Donnarumma, especially stepping up in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
I think he's the one that's kept PSG in the Champions League, and then as everyone else has grown into it, they've just become bigger than themselves.
In France, we say that the change in Donnarumma's performances happened when against Monaco he had his car on the face. It's a joke, but
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's been pivotal for them. I think once again we talked about this the other day. I mean, when they beat Liverpool in penalties, I think that was the point where they said this is the team. They can go on and win. I think there's been interviews and they said, look, this is the point where we know we're this is our year. So and I think the just the last thing, that Botafogo Sounders game, I think that was a pretty good, Daniel talked about it a little bit, but both those teams now, I think Botafogo will think, hey, listen, we can get a draw against Atletico Madrid and we're through into the next round. Seattle will probably say, look, we played pretty well. I think they outshot them. They played well, a little bit unlucky to not get a point there. So, both those teams will think maybe against Atletico Madrid, we can get something. Seattle's going to have to win because, I don't think either of those teams is going to beat PSG. So that's yesterday. Today, when we only have the 3 games today. Chelsea, LAFC. I'm going to give you times at Eastern times. Chelsea, LAFC is at 3. Boca Juniors, Benfica is at 6. Yeah. Flamengo against Esperance Tunis is 9. In Philly, that's the game I may, depending on how my schedule goes, maybe I'll take a ride down there because I think I could probably walk up to the stadium and possibly get a spot on one of the benches in the dugout for that game. I might be able to wear my Flamengo kit and possibly join in. I don't think there's going to be a big crowd for that in Philadelphia. I could be wrong, but we'll see. I think everyone kind of is excited to see, what this Chelsea team now with Liam Delap can do and some of their players, because we talked about this. I think last year they finished top 5 and got Champions League and won the Conference League with Nicholas Jackson, who's maybe not the ideal 9 for the system. He did okay, but maybe Delap is the guy that can score some goals, and maybe that takes Chelsea to the next level up. LAFC, of course, the champions of from last year, and whatever that cup they called it, they beat the Mexican team to get in. Boca Juniors, Benfica, I think will be an interesting match. Yeah. Two kind of big clubs there, and that's in Miami at the Hard Rock. Flamengo, Tunis, I just don't know. That's a pretty I think pretty tough game to call at this point. But of these 3 games, which one stands out to you two?
Okay. In my opinion, Boca Juniors versus Benfica will be just like yesterday's Palmeiras versus Porto against a South American team, a European team, Portuguese as well, and with good players. It will be nice to see. I really like Edinson Cavani when he was at PSG, so it's a good thing for me to see him. Angel Di Maria also. it will be a game, I think, an open game. Maybe not 0-0 like yesterday, but it will be interesting. And I want to see Esperance also, but I think I will watch it tomorrow morning because it's at 3 a.m. in Paris, so it's kind of late for us here.
But
I have to agree. I think what we're really searching for at this tournament, because I think the assumption is the majority of the European teams are going to go through, and the worry or one of the concerns is that once you get to the quarterfinal, 8 of the 8 quarterfinal places, 6 or 7 are European teams, and then it just becomes some things that, as followers of European competition, we've seen before and we see all the time, and it becomes less interesting. What we want are teams from basically anywhere else to make it forward. So you're looking at matches like Boca Juniors against Benfica, where there is an opportunity. Benfica lost. Am I right saying this? Lost the title, the Portuguese Primeira, on the last day of the season.
Yeah,
that is an emotional blow and would have had to, would take its toll. And yet they haven't really had the ability to switch off like you do at the end of the season and then start again 6-7 weeks later. Suddenly it's only a couple of weeks, and then they have to come back and pick themselves up again. And South America is only halfway through their seasons. So this is an opportunity for Boca. And in doing so, if they are able to beat Benfica, there's the opportunity. And suddenly they really only need 1 point from their final 2 matches. So when you're looking at other international club teams against European teams, we want to see where are the potential victories, where are the potential points gained, and I think Boca have as good a chance as any.
MUFC South at this point with Boca, with Cavani, Ander Herrera, Marcos Rojo, Sergio Romero, all the old the 2016, 2017 United team there. Yeah, I think this is an interesting game for fans of the tournament. There's going to be a lot of these. I think you're going to get these games a lot of times. I don't think you're going to see a lot of 10-0 Bayern, against Auckland City, because Auckland City's so bad. But I think there's going to be some games. Chelsea has the opportunity maybe to go out and if they play well, they could win that game 4-5-0, 5-1, something like this. But then you get the 2 games, Boca Junior, Benfica, and Flamengo and Tunis, where you get these, the battles. You saw yesterday, Palmeiras, Porto, Botafogo, Seattle, the other teams that aren't the European heavyweights. And, those are the games where if you're a fan of the sport, and if you're, once again, maybe there's not going to be as many people in the stands watching, but there may be more interesting matches. People don't always want to see, 10 goals. We got a comment there, but I thought it was something good, but it's just somebody spamming us again. But yeah, for me, if I end up going to that Flamengo and Tunis match, Group D, Chelsea, LAFC, Flamengo, and Tunis. Look, I mean, the winner of this match, has to think Chelsea will probably win the group. But the winner, if there is a winner of this match, we'll have to think. Listen, hey, if we can get 3 points here, we just have to basically beat. If we beat LAFC or get a point against them, you're probably through into the next round, no matter what you do against Chelsea. So I mean, it's a pretty big match, and you going back to Daniel's point. I mean, you want to see some of these other teams kind of get through into the to the knockout stage and maybe make a run to a quarterfinal, or maybe mix up the quarters a little bit. So it is a pretty big match. I mean, I don't know. Once again, I don't know how many people are going to be at it. I'm here outside Philly, so I kind of see the signs. They're selling signs when you go down the road on the billboards for, hey, tickets available for this match. And I know like the Real Madrid match still has tickets. So I'm like, man, if Real Madrid still has, I don't know how many people are going to go to this. But I think, if you're a fan in the area, this is a great match to go to because it's going to be competitive. And it's going to be something that's you want to be able to watch.
Yeah, I remember I was reading an article in a different media outlet. Apologies, John. But they were making a very good reference about the organisation of where some of these teams play, and obviously, you can't really avoid it because many of these games and stadiums are chosen well in advance of which teams would be playing in those stadiums. But the fact that Messi was playing at Miami's home stadium, right?
Seattle's at home. But they're pretty smart about this. They do this. So there's this whole thing going on around, when U.S. would play Mexico in these games, they put it, if it was an important game, they'd put it in the winter, they'd put it in Colorado in the snow sometimes. Yeah. Before maybe they used to put them in Texas, in Dallas, and the big stadium there so they could sell tickets, about selling tickets, and maybe not about I think with this, what they've done, there's no it's no coincidence they put that Porto and Palmeiras game at MetLife yesterday in North Jersey. They knew they're going to sell that like crazy because of the population there. The Seattle's playing at home for their 3 matches, and there's not a lot of games on the West Coast. Yesterday's PSG game was on West. Seattle's playing at home because they know they're going to sell tickets, they're playing strategically. They're putting Real Madrid in certain places, and they're putting this. I think that's pretty smart. When they get to the, I looked at the schedule. Basically the last 4 matches of the tournament are all at MetLife in New Jersey. The last quarterfinal on July 5th, both semifinals and the final. And that's where the World Cup final will be as well.
Yeah.
So they're putting this. There's a game in Philadelphia on July 4th, obviously, next year for the 250th anniversary of America on July 4th, the Declaration of Independence, all that stuff. They're going to play one of the quarterfinals there, so that's a pretty big deal. They're going to do the same thing here. So I know it's a dry run for the World Cup spots, in Atlanta, Miami, New York, but they've done a pretty decent job, I think, putting games where people will buy tickets. And then just look, Flamengo and Tunis, you put it wherever because, it's not a glamour tie. It's going to be a good match probably, but it's not a glamour tie. I don't think, maybe you put it in Philly because once again, you just played the match yesterday at MetLife, so you can't do it 2 days in a row. So you put it in Philly and you hope that the Portuguese fans and the Brazilian fans drive down. And there is a little, there's obviously New York, New Jersey. There's a bunch of people from basically all over North Africa, Tunisia as well. But there's a little bit of a population here because of its proximity to East Coast ports and whatnot. So I think, they're doing a pretty good job with that. But once again, there's so much. If you looked on like Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and all this before, there's so many stories like ripping it, like the tickets aren't selling and whatever. But they're the first time they're doing it. They're trying something different. It's the middle of the summer. The tickets were a little bit expensive. Now they're coming down, so you're starting to see, I think, late, last week, the ticket prices started to come down. So people were buying the tickets now. So I think, you're in a better spot.
Yeah. And I want to say something about what you've just said, because on socials, we can see a lot of criticisms about the attendances and everything, but I want to point something positive in my opinion. First, I know that the US has a different way to consume sports, and entertainment than us in Europe. But during the PSG versus Atletico, it was 80,000 people during the game for a 90,000 seated stadium. I think it's a good attendance for instance. Moreover, if you compare it to the Gold Cup, I saw some pics about the USA versus Trinidad and Tobago's game. It was empty, but very, very empty. Another positive point, I think, of this competition is the way to refer the games. I love to see the ref cam. I really like the idea of telling the whole stadium decision after a VAR review, because I think it prevents all of the troubling situations and everything. And the main positive aspect of this competition is that it's free to watch all over the world. I think it's something very important if you want to promote a product, as FIFA wants to do with its competition. And now, even if you are in Mexico, France, or I don't know where in the world, you can see this big event for free, and it's really positive, I think, even if it's to promote its football. But
I'm reading a story now. The U.S. Trinidad. First of all, they're playing the Gold Cup at the same time. Like, nobody cares about the Gold Cup. Like, I'm not the biggest U.S. soccer supporter in the world. I mean, when we used to go to games when they're in the Philly, and they would play these double header games, like first game and second game, to try to get more people in and stuff. Like, you know, there was about 8,000 people at the game. The stadium held 18,000. They're playing it in San Jose, right above where they're playing the PSG. Like, who are you going to go see if you have an opportunity yesterday? You know, if you're a football fan, PSG, Atletico Madrid, or U.S. and Trinidad and Tobago in a match, it's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, it's crazy that they're doing this at the same time. You think maybe they would have waited a little bit and put it, started it later in the campaign, so you don't have to pick and choose between this. But it's I think I think the attendance numbers for this tournament are going to start creeping up, because once again they figured out, why are we pay? We shouldn't be charging $250 for a ticket for a group stage match. Let's just lower the price so people can come to the match and enjoy it, and we'll get bigger. We'll get better press, and it's worth all this stuff. And I think that's what you're going to see.
Yeah.
I think one of the valid criticisms, though, is the scale of the upgrade, right? So obviously, originally, or rather before this, the Club World Cup was only 16s, right? So you had semi-final, you had the four teams, two teams playing each other in the quarterfinal, but then you got seeded teams that are European and South America, then playing the winners of them. So it was such a tiny thing and easily ignored, and the same thing exists. It's just now back to the Intercontinental Cup. But 𝐊𝐤𝐤, you may or may not agree with this, but it was a widely held belief before the format change in 2016 that the Euros were harder to win than the World Cup in international football.
Yeah.
Because of the condensed nature of it. So there were only 16 teams, and more often than not, you got one at least, or sometimes two groups with three big teams. Because again, there are only 16 teams can get into the competition. What is interesting is that for this Club World Cup, rather than as a trial go to 16 teams, which would be a lot more manageable, but also have a more condensed quality of club. But they've gone straight to 32 because it is that reach for financial gain and again,
TV money.
Well, yeah, and they have a condensed calendar of football. Why wasn't it originally? the first 10. Okay, Club World Cup. Let's make it 16 teams, and then you can have. Probably not more than 2 clubs from Oceania, but suddenly you've only got 2 from each continent, maybe 3 from Europe and South America, and it's so much more competitive. And then you avoid things like what we saw with Bayern and Auckland potentially, or you do worry about even further. So who else is in Bayern and Auckland's group currently?
Let me check to not say something bad.
It's Bayern and
yeah,
Boca and Benfica.
Yep.
Okay, so Auckland, realistically, I think they're a semi-professional side. The fact is, the club themselves. It's wonderful that the club is going to get this money from coming to the Club World Cup, because that is life-changing for a club such as that. And my real hope is that a significant amount of that goes to the players as well, because they all have jobs, just regular jobs. There are plumbers, there are teachers, there are, who are playing football as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of amazing. That is brilliant. But the reality is, they'll be lucky to score a goal, let alone get a point. So what we don't want to see is, therefore, like Benfica puts 6 or 7 past them, because it doesn't mean anything. And suddenly you might as well. It's like when you have a qualifying group in Europe, and you have San Marino in your group. Oh, actually, that's unfair. San Marino have won a couple of matches in the last 12 months. But a team like them, or Liechtenstein, or something like that, suddenly it's like, well, this doesn't matter. This massive victory. You might as well have 3 teams in that group. And then what the worry is that there are so many, like, let's say Red Bull Salzburg, who were the 9th qualifying team for Europe. They didn't even win their Austrian league this season or last season, and yet they've qualified for this. So what right do they have to be there? Auckland City have far more right to be there than Red Bull Salzburg, than Benfica, than a lot of these other European clubs that have got there, just because they're European, essentially, and you've got 9 extra slots. Does that make sense? So you could have easily made this tournament 16 and made it even more competitive and had the best clubs in the world.
I totally agree. I thought we could have started this tournament at the round of 16 with a classic draw on a 1-match decider, and it could be good with 2 or 3 big European teams, 2 or 3 big South American, and everything. Because now the problem is that we have too much competition at the same time. We have too much competition in a season, and it's kind of, I think it's dangerous for the football fans, because we want to see quality over quantity, but FIFA wants quantity over quality, and it will not work. It can work, I think, for 2-3 years, but it's impossible to follow everything, because Sean, you were talking about the Gold Cup. There is also the Under 21 European Championship. So there are players who are playing at the European Championship who could have played at the Club World Cup too. Yes. I also heard that there is a Porto player who could play at the Club World Cup and then at the Gold Cup with his country. So what's the point? What is the limit to the players? There is no longer a summer break for teams, because last year was the European Championship, then the season, now the Club World Cup, in winter the Africa Cup of Nations, next year the World Cup. It's impossible I think, as for the players and as for the viewers, supporters, to follow everything.
Welcome.
It's fatigue on 2 fronts, right? It's player fatigue and fan fatigue. Yeah. Player fatigue has real problems, and we've already seen an increase in serious injuries across the board. That therefore, like, as fans, we see less of the best players in the world because their knees are buckling for 6 months. And then there's fan fatigue, where certain competitions we won't watch because, well, we'll see the team in 2 or 3 days. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, and I worked out recently that whereas before, obviously with international tournaments, you'd have every other summer off properly. Now, obviously things like the Nations League across UEFA and CONCACAF and whatever, that's taking up a bit of slots, but it's still only a couple of weeks. But now with the expanded UEFA competitions and expanded FIFA competitions, and they're fighting each other for who gets the most money, basically. What you have on our players getting one summer off every 4 years.
Yeah.
And even that is less than 5 weeks. So like over the course of 4 years, they get something, what is it? It's something like a combined total of 7 to 9 weeks over 4 years guaranteed off. It's going to kill them. And obviously we've had this model for players about like when their peak age is between sort of 25 and 29, or if you're a defender or a goalkeeper slightly older. We're probably going to see it shooting down now because of, first of all, how quickly younger players develop. Fantastic. But also, you'll probably find that they go down because their peak physical condition, they burn out quicker.
Yeah.
It's a real worry. Sorry, I talked completely over someone's arrival.
No. Bom dia, Pedro. How's it going over there?
Hi, Pedro.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
How are you?
I was listening your opinions, and I totally agree with them. I watched yesterday the Porto match, and I'm really disappointed with the Porto performance. I know this is the supporting cast, but come on, a Portuguese club with used to play the UEFA Champions League to make such a poor exhibition. I'm really disappointed. I agree that the guys who rule the soccer in the world in FIFA, they are more interested in the billions of incomes than the quality of the matches played. Another issue, and I think it's not the least, at the European soccer season, it's very demanding, and the players supposed to be on their major holidays. And what I saw yesterday from Porto, it was a lack of motivation. In a matter of the fans, the people who are watching, I hope the next rounds will show better games quality. And this tournament, this clubs world tournament, can become a more important event. For example, I have good expectations about Benfica today against Boca Juniors, because Benfica lost the Portuguese championship for Sporting in the last round. They played well in the UEFA Champions League. They have been defeated by Barcelona in the playoffs, and I expected a good game today. I think both teams have motivation, Boca Juniors and Benfica, to give a good show. But had I say, I don't know. What I have seen yesterday, it was not a good quality game from Porto. I don't know. What do you guys expected for the next round? Do you see motivation in the players and in clubs to show a good football and improve themselves, or it will be a boring tournament?
Sorry, I'm going to jump in there. First of all, Pedro, lovely to meet you. Hope you're having a lovely holiday wherever you are. Yes, so something I was looking at, because obviously it's very early in the tournament. We've only got 2 groups that have had 4 clubs do a round of matches. We've got Group B with PSG and Botafogo with 3 points, and Seattle and Atletico with 0 points, right? So that's, first of all, the sad thing is that Seattle, with a great home crowd and actually played really well, we're already looking at them basically being eliminated because they have to play Atletico and PSG still. There is a possibility that if they manage to beat Atletico, you can have a group with one team having 9 points and 3 on 3, but it's unlikely. But what you do have is, I think Sean, you mentioned earlier, like Botafogo, if they can get a result against Atletico, then that is a possibility of them going through. So that's a real bit of hope, a real bit of something to aim for. But Group A is, ironically, very interesting because it's so boring. because the first round of matches, they were 2-0. So there are no goals scored, no goals conceded, and everybody's got 1 point. So essentially, that was completely irrelevant, that first round of matches. But the thing is, in this format, you've only got potential 18 points to win. But because that was all just wiped, but now there's only 12 points remaining. So now you've got this possibility where every single team could finish on, you could have 3 teams on 4 points or something like that. So, it could also, because Porto's level dropped a bit, and you've got, what have I got here? Inter Miami as well. There is more likelihood in that group of someone just having one victory out of nowhere. If Inter Miami can beat Palmeiras or Porto, then they're into the next round. That's all you need. You've got 2 matches left. If you can win one, you are probably in the next round. Yep. And so there's more likelihood of go for it, or having, or you're having that sort of the bravery of going for it against a bigger team or potentially a better team. But it also goes back to what we were talking before about like PSG, right? A bit about these big moments. So Al Ahly have some really good players. They could easily get a result against Palmeiras or Porto. There is a real opportunity for any of the non-European teams to get through. If they just have to have one win, like we saw it with Botafogo, right? Because they beat Seattle, they're just looking for one more point, and they got a real chance of doing it. So so now because those first 2 matches were so boring, and well, not boring as such, but the fact is 2-0 means that actually the board is a lot more even. Suddenly Porto, they're expected to go through, and so the pressure is going to be on them, and it might make the others a bit braver.
Okay.
I think we're gonna see. I think we're going to see after this first round. I think you're going to kind of see, other than maybe 1 or 2 groups, you're going to see a clear delineation between the teams that are going to go through, and you're going to have a pretty good idea. But like you said, Group A, you look at Group E, River Plate, UARA, Monterrey, Inter. You imagine Inter's going to go through, but someone else is going to come through. River Plate, the Japanese team, Monterrey from Mexico. Someone's going to come through there. You look at Group F, Fluminense, Dortmund, Olsen, Mamelodi, Sundowns. Someone's going to come through that group. There's going to be, Group H, Real Madrid, Al Hilal, Pachuca, Salzburg. Everyone's talking about, why Salzburg here. They can kind of prove why they're here, or, they could say, listen, they could get embarrassed. But there's going to be some spots open for some of these other teams that maybe, like if a Mamelodi Sundowns gets through, the runner-up in Africa, if they get through, it's a big money for them. It's a big deal. They kind of get this stuff. So I think you're going to see, it open up a little bit more in match day 2, hopefully. We'll see as it goes along here in these next groups, but we're once again, the winner is going to be PSG, Real Madrid, Manchester City.
Yeah, I would say. Sorry, I'm going to jump in again because also the great thing is that all of these teams have experience with knockout football, right? They've all won their continental competitions. Well, nearly all of them, certainly the non-European ones. So they have experience of navigating through a tournament. So chances are they will have not only the tactical savvy, but the managerial savvy of when you come against the quote unquote, the big club in the group, it's a free hit, but also you play it tactical. So chances are there'll be a lot more defensive against the bigger team to try and avoid losing a significant or having a disadvantage with goal difference. But then the real tournament is with the other teams around you. As you were saying, like so many of these groups, the second place spot is up for grabs. And a lot of these second European teams are vulnerable, like Salzburg, like Benfica, as Pedro was saying about, the fact that they lost the title on the last day of the season. And also you've got a lot of teams that have lost their managers only a couple of weeks ago. These are new ideas, trying to mix with players. Inter have got a new manager now. In fact, there's another team in the tournament that has their manager.
Al Hilal, yeah.
So what we'll almost certainly see is the big team in the group probably being defensive. I think you'll find that there might be one or two teams that might be naive, and they're the ones that might get hit, like 5-6 goals conceded, and that could ruin their chances. But the ones that are more savvy in that single match, concentrating on the other two games, I think that's where you'll see teams progressing into the next round of the tournament.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, do we have any kind of we're here in the last couple minutes, and any predictions for today? Pedro, you got any predictions? I know you're Leo, Daniel, any kind of predictions for the games today?
Leo, what do you think about Benfica group today? Give us your opinion.
I think it will end with a draw, because I drew a parallel between Palmeiras versus Porto and Boca Juniors versus Benfica, and I think it can be the same way. An interesting game with a lot of rhythm, good players, good atmosphere, but it will be disputed, and I think both teams need to win, because Boca Juniors' last title was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. Benfica just lost the Portuguese title on the final day of the championship. They want to take their revenge, even if it's not against Sporting. They want to prove that they can go further and play in that kind of big competition. So I think it will be a good game, and to predict the result is going to be difficult, but I think a draw, it will be a draw. And you, Pedro, what do you think?
Let me just say for the other guests who are listeners that I am Portuguese. I live in Lisbon. I'm born and raised here, and I'm rooting for Benfica. It's a club from my town, and the president of the club, Rui Costa, said in the press conference, "We are not here for holidays. We want to win, and we want to grab the win and score goals." So let's see if that happens or not.
And just to say something about that and what Rui Costa said, when you see the company's lineup yesterday against Auckland City, I think every team are here to win, because there is a big prize money at the end of the Club World Cup. So they don't want to take any risk to have a bad result or a deceiving one against a lower team.
Daniel, what do you think? Yeah. Sorry, Leo.
No, it's a fact. I think, because remind me, so it's Bayern, Boca, Benfica, Auckland. That's the group, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think because Boca, I think, are going to be so up. I think they're going to have so much of the crowd behind them. Against Benfica, I honestly think there's a real opportunity that I think Bayern, Boca, and Benfica will all finish on 6 points. They'll all beat Auckland, and then they'll each beat each other once, and then it's to do with how many goals they scored against Auckland, perversely. I think Boca will have the edge here. I think, again, the middle of their season, with the crowd behind them, I'm going for Boca to win this one. Yeah, I think so.
I think that's a pretty good shout. I think Boca has a real good chance, maybe 2-1. I think Flamengo, looking at the lineups here, I think Flamengo beats Tunis Esperance.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's going to be 2-0, something like this. I would love to see 𝐊𝐤𝐤𝐤 score about 2 or 3 goals today against Chelsea. Like that would be pretty cool, but that's not gonna. I don't know. He might score, but I think Chelsea probably wins that pretty easily.
Yeah, I think LAFC don't have the pace. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the romantic in you things like, oh, it'd be great fun, but I just think the pace
Nah,
of
they
Chelsea
can't.
is too
Yeah,
much.
I think. Look, I honestly, I think Chelsea has a chance here. You can kind of see what they're doing. They buy 100 players, and hopefully some of them work out. And I think at some point, obviously it works out. And I think this is an opportunity for Chelsea in this tournament to kind of start rolling into next season based on the confidence they have from winning the Conference League and making the Champions League and all this, and they have a chance to really start the season well. And I think I think they're one of these teams here, and once again, they could rotate because they have such a deep squad. But I think they're one of these teams that have a chance to use this as a springboard to really go into next season and make a charge because once again the Premier League is pretty open, I think, but unless Manchester City buys another 500 million worth of players. But yeah, I think I think they make a statement today. That's just what I think.
Yeah,
and I think they have to make a statement because they are a dominant force in European football. People could have maybe forget it, like it's for Sorishan, but for Manchester United, they need to prove they're back because now they are European champion, even if it's only the Conference Cup. Now they have to prove that they can play at the highest level and compete with the biggest teams in the world or in Europe because they will play Champions League football next season. And if they want to compete also in the Premier League, I think it's a good group to not send a message because you don't play against big teams like Real Madrid, Bayern, but it's a good way to show the world that you have good players, good perspective for the future, and you have to make a statement, as you said.
Yeah, I would say I don't want to be pessimistic, but truthfully, I think one of the other reasons Boca against Benfica is be so exciting is in comparison to the other two, which I think will be quite slow affairs. And I think Chelsea will beat LAFC fairly easily, but also the way that Maresca plays his teams, it is quite slow and build up. It's quite controlled.
Yeah.
So there's more chance that if they get 2 goals ahead, there won't necessarily be more because, again, conserving energy. It's a long tournament. It's very hot. And like you say, lots of rotation, which is great for tournament football because that means by the round of 16, basically all of their players have played and no one's that tired. I get the feeling that it'll be quite a slow victory for Chelsea, and I just think that's going to be happening for basically every single one of their matches, I think.
Yeah, it's a kind of second UEFA Conference League for them against teams.
Yeah, in this
lower
group,
divisions. Yeah.
Let me just say that I'm also following the under-21 European Championship, where great national European teams are there, like Portugal, which I hope goes through to the playoffs, and also France, England. I don't know if you, Shan, in another show, you want to talk about this youth tournament.
Yeah, we could do that. The group stage ends Wednesday, and then the quarterfinals start Saturday. So maybe we can do a show maybe Wednesday evening, and we can recap everything and go forward. So we can kind of look at the teams that'll be going through. I know big matches this week: Georgia, Portugal, France, Poland, England, Germany, Spain, Italy. There's some big matches. So maybe Wednesday night we can, after the matches are over and the dust is settled, we can kind of look and see what that tournament looks like for the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals.
Because There are a lot of things to say, starting with why France versus Portugal ended as 0-0, because it was, I think, 40 shots from the teams and no goals, and I think less than 10 shots in the spot. So it was a good game with a lot of great players, as we saw with especially super fast Portuguese players. But how could this game end up like 0-0? It was impossible to predict.
All right. So we will see you again tomorrow morning. We'll look through all these matches today, and we'll recap those, and we'll go over the matches tomorrow. There's some, once again, 4 matches tomorrow. Some interesting battles tomorrow. Dortmund, Inter playing, and then some other, other cross matches going on. So I think tomorrow will be interesting as well. So tune back in. Thanks for watching. Remember, like, subscribe. Follow us on all the socials. They're down there: YouTube, Instagram. We're on Kick. We're on X. We're everywhere. Just follow us, and we will follow you back. All right.
Okay, guys. Take care. It was a pleasure.
See you tomorrow.
Have a great day.
See you tomorrow, guys.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.